Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. Super, super excited to have our next guest on the show. One of the things that you'll know on the show is that we are focusing on that kitchen table talk conversation where two friends come together, have an honest conversation, and the rules are that we can't yell at each other, we can't talk over each other, and we can't interrupt. We want to ask questions to understand, to really get to that conversation versus assuming ill intent on the other side or just making assumptions and walking out the door. But we're inviting you to be that fly on the wall, to sit with us, to learn how we are navigating this conversation and learning how to have hard conversations. And today I have Ernest with me, and he's going to be talking about something that I don't think a lot of self-help books will talk about. And as he puts it, it's can you say it again, what the book title is? Because I think that that's what our episode is going to be called.
The book title is Asshole to Awesome, A Journey to Joy and Happiness.
Okay, so let's just dig in. How did you get to this topic? What happened? And how did you arrive at that of a title? So let's just dig in.
First, I just didn't like the guy that I saw in the mirror. I knew I could be a better person. I always say I had a backpack full of like crap and rocks, and I was just carrying it around with me, and it was like all my unforgiving. I was racist, probably sexist, misogynist, kind of all the ists that you want to throw out there. And I went to work trying to improve myself, but I kept noticing that it was almost like a diet. You know, when everybody goes on a diet for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they're fantastic, and then they fall off the diet and they end up weighing 5 pounds more than they were before they started the diet.
You're like, wait.
Yeah. I was like, dude, I'm that same jackass that I was when I started this crap.
No, that's the worst.
It is. It honestly is. So so the big thing was I had to figure out where I was starting, right? Because all these books kind of give you a good place to go and how to get there, but it's like that GPS on your phone. If your location isn't on at that time, you can plug in wherever it is. It's not going to take you there, right? So you have to know where you're at, and that was my big thing. I didn't know where I was at, but from doing some work, I figured out where I was at, and then I improved. I found that happiness, and then I use asshole was like how I described myself. And I think there's a lot of them out there in the world that we could probably describe as assholes.
Yeah.
And then awesome I use as like a process, or awesome is like a faraway destination. I know I'm never going to 100% be awesome, but it's a process that I enjoy trying to be a little bit better every day.
Okay, so let's dig a little more into, so you said you identified some things. You said, okay, so I was dealing with being really rude to people in various ways, like being racist, like being misogynistic, like these things. But can you give me a brief understanding of what that actually looked like? Because I think a lot of people will say those things, be like, oh, I was being misogynistic, and then they don't really dive into what that looked like. And why did that hit you so badly?
I'll use the racist one because that was probably the biggest one that I was. I grew up in this little town where at one point I was considered like they called it a wigger. I was a white guy who hung around with all black guys, and I could actually use the N word, and it was like nobody ever thought about it. And then in the later 80s, like gangs became really prevalent, and our town got an influx of people that were not from our town. And then I found out quite quickly that I was not supposed to be using that N word. And also at the same time, some of my friends that I thought were my friends were not my friends anymore because I was white and I wasn't in that crowd. And so like it became a racially separated place. And then I had friends that kind of were beat up, or not kind of beat up. He was actually beat up because he was a white guy. He had to get medevaced out. They cracked his skull.
God.
And it was different little things that just built up. And you know, like when you start stereotyping, it's bad, right? There's going to be crappy people in every single race. There's going to be fantastic people in every single race. But at that time where I was at, I just grouped everybody kind of together. And if you were whatever, and
So
I
it
didn't
just
like you.
okay. So it kind of happened to like anybody and everybody. Like you were. It wasn't. So I think sometimes what we learn there I feel like there is a difference between someone who learned that this was just what everyone did, because a lot of my friends would use words that were super inappropriate and didn't matter what their race or gender was. They just were like, we're just going to use this, and it's fine, you can say it by association. But then getting into the world, you're like, oh, that's not something that we should be saying, regardless if my friend from high school, middle school gave me permission to say it at that point. But how did you end up starting to stereotype people? Because I think some people will claim that everything is racism, but really we start to stereotype, or we start to assume ill intent on people, and it has nothing really to do with race. So I'm trying to track with you. So can you help me understand how it was racist in that?
It, it was more like I had the rhetoric, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were a certain ethnicity, I would use the word, and then it was I even have a gigantic back tattoo that's, if you probably dig into it, it was I was putting it on my back for a reason, to just,
Like to
and
make
it
a
was kind of,
statement.
yeah,
Mm.
I mean, it's a gigantic, because my last name is Wood, and if you're in prison, like I've had some uncles in prison, a Wood is a white supremacist, like a
Oh,
peckerwood, right? So,
okay.
and then I had the colonial flag, where I used the colonial flag because it was a time where there was still, the slavery crap. And then I also have the don't tread on me. So it was like a whole thing, right? And it grew into something. I think maybe, and sometimes during like my childhood, like your parents will say something stupid. Like I had a couple African American teachers that I would always get in trouble, and
Mm.
it was almost like they were picking on me because I was white. That's what my brain thought was. But and when I look back at it, it was actually because I was a jackass. I was a little smart ass kid being
Mm.
a punk. But
Okay.
my parent, one of my mom, or I think it might have been my grandpa, was like, "Well, no wonder she's picking on you. You're a little white kid or whatever, right?" So then I
Mm.
grabbed that little thing, and then I grabbed this next little thing, and then I grabbed, like, I wasn't able to start on the basketball team because I was the white kid, but it was probably because I had a shitty attitude. Excuse my term,
Mm.
but
No, you're good. Yeah, that's what we do here. So it turned but then you started using that same lens to everybody else. Like it wasn't just like, oh, well, it's because of the color of my skin that you don't like me, but then it was like, well, because of the color of your skin, I am assuming that you are like everybody else that I have. Like, okay, you're black, you must be in a gang. Oh, you're Mexican, you must be like, you must not speak English. Like those are, or you must not be from here. Like those are things that you were thinking. Am I tracking that properly?
kind of like, it's weird. It's so hard, like, because I wasn't like a true racist where it was just all white pride, white power, all that crap.
Mm.
I just had a hard time with the African American race for a little while. Like I judged them
Mm.
because of some of the crap that happened in our town. And it wasn't like I didn't have black friends. I still had, black
Yeah.
friends. But in general, when I saw somebody, it was going to be like, yeah, he's, man, he's probably a Democrat. I stupid, like
So
that
more
was my whole
that
thing.
that's stereotyping.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So it is something that I want to differentiate because of the fact that I think a lot of us do say racism for everything at this point, and most of the time it's stereotyping, where we're just like, oh, you're black, you must be Democrat. Oh, you must be for I know for where I grew up, it was like you're white, you must be trailer trash. Like you must live in it, and it was like so we heard those things, and I wasn't in a weird, I was in California, we were just in an unincorporated area, but a lot of white kids came from the trailer area. But it was like, oh, you're a white girl and you hung out with that white girl and she's trailer trash, so you must be, and so it was like guilty by association. But then what, you started to recognize, and if I'm hearing this incorrectly, please correct me, is that whatever you learned growing up and with people, you started to take on, like, oh, they hate me because I'm white, so I'm going to do this back to kind of get at them, which is where the tattoos came in. You knew that there was a significance in There was even though your last name is Wood, it wasn't a like it's prideful because it's my family name. You were like, oh, I know that this is going to irk somebody. I'm going to do it because I think it's funny. That's what it was. Am I hearing that kind of correct?
Oh yeah, because it came into a dual reason. I mean, it was easy
Yeah.
to explain. It was easy
Like,
to
oh, it's my
explain
last name,
away.
but you're like, I really know what the real meaning behind it is.
Yeah, and
That's rude. It
it was rude. I'm not
was
even gonna
rude.
lie. It was like, and I played basketball a lot, so we would go down like me and my buddy. But the funny thing is, all my best friends were Hispanics, so like all my, so we would go into places, and it was and we'd go play basketball. So when I'd take off my shirt, everybody would see Wood, and they would automatically assume that I was out of prison or something like that.
Yeah,
So
but you knew getting because so this is what I need someone to hear because there's going to be people who get their name tattooed and they're like it's totally fine. Like I know people who get tattoos because they think they're funny. You know, like it's like okay, let's do something simple. The Playboy bunny. Like a girl has a tattoo of a Playboy bunny. What are you going to automatically assume? You're going to assume that they're into weird crap.
yeah,
This is that thing as when you get a tattoo, you normally don't just go grab a tattoo and be like, cool, I got it. There's a meaning behind it. Now, there are times, like I know someone whose last name was Wood and he did not know that there was a significant thing behind it. He was just like, I'm very proud of my family because of where we have come from and how much we have overcome. And so he got a tattoo of his name, his dad's name, his grandpa's name, because they all had the same first name and the same last name. So for him, it was pride in his family lineage. He did find out later on that the word was different, and he's like, oh, shoot. But he was very aware then, but not before. So
yeah,
this is where, when we do symbols, that's like pretty like, oh, there's something behind that. But when we're trying to be a snarky person, we're just like, haha, that's funny. Like people are going to be shocked when I see it. So that's where your mindset was at, was like, I really want to like get that moment with someone to be like, oh, this dude. Is that what I'm hearing? Sometimes, yeah.
yeah. It was pretty close because
Pretty
I
close.
changed it. I was gonna go just super hardcore and throw up the rebel flag or whatever at that time. And I was
Yeah.
like, nah, let me be a little more subtle about this because in case I ever did change in life, right? But
Mm.
we get in those stupid spots where, and that was one of the things that I had to learn was the only thing you're ever in control of is your thoughts and how you respond to something. But I always reacted like I was just a big one reactionary person. Anything that happened,
Okay.
I had a
Yeah.
reaction to it.
And that how has that been difficult to like what was that harder to work through just being going from reactionary to like what do you do now?
Once I learned, like, I talk about it in the book, is like I learned forgiveness, grateful, empathy, how to be, how to forgive, how to be, have gratitude, how to be empathy, have empathy, and then like I do an act of kindness every day. But in
Mhm.
those little things, what I learned was breathing. I learned to take care of my fundamental stuff, and then my brain stuff all started falling
Mm.
in place.
Mm. Okay.
Um,
I love that. So it's it's interesting because self-auditing isn't always what it's not our strong suit as people. But I think you said something kind of key is that you took on rhetorics that were said in like your family and where you grew up. So it was like, oh, it must be because you're this, but you're your skin color, whatever. And then it'd be like you recognize it like, no, maybe it was just that I was being kind of a jerk. And that's why the teachers were being so like hard on me on this situation. Like what how do you start to work through those moments of where you're going, hold on, that wasn't that person and I was very wrong about that.
how I started working on it was, like I said, I just knew that I wanted to be a better person because like it's not fun to be freaking grumpy, pissed off, like not in control of what you're doing. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like look in our world, most people react to everything. Like
Yeah.
you can't have an opinion that's outside of the norm anymore. or somebody's going to react, somebody's going to cry, you're going to upset somebody, and you got to fluff their little hair, like it. And to me, it's just like, it's learning to be okay with yourself and
Hmm.
having that inner happiness, because now I don't really dude, say what you want to say. Most of the time you're not going to get a reaction out of me. It is what it is, dude. Like,
Hmm.
and that's kind of how I try to live life. I'm not perfect. None of us ever going to be. And that was something else I had to learn.
Yeah.
I had to try to drop that whole perfectionism thing. I was an absolutely brutal father coach for a long time because it was
Hmm.
all that perfection and crap that I had.
What was the wake up call that made you evaluate yourself though? Because you don't just get to be like, well, I'm tired of being grumpy. Like, what was it that really shook you to be like, I can't do this anymore? I won't do this anymore.
So I always tell, there's two stories that I always tell. And then one of them is a road rage thing where
Speechless.
I was listening to Brian Tracy say, don't give your emotions away. That's the only thing you have control of. At the same time, somebody
Mm.
cut me off and I lost my shit, man. I went absolutely crazy. I mean, we were probably driving 100 some odd miles an hour. I was trying to cut this dude off. I was trying to get next to him.
Yeah.
I was cutting other people off. And I finally get next to him, and he has a kid in the back of his car.
Oh God.
And I'm like,
Mm.
God dang, man. And then, like, that was the one, that was like one of the main ones. And then the other one was, I was at work, and I was actually trying to fix myself at this time. And this guy goes, you're just like, we'll call him Tony Bob or whatever, right?
Mm.
And nobody wanted to be like that guy. He was the guy who all he
Mm.
did was say the F word. He bitched, whined, cried, moaned. And
Yeah.
that was me, but I thought I was fixing it. But then when somebody
Yeah.
said, nah, you're like that dude, I was like, oh shit, man. Nah,
Yeah.
dude.
Not
Okay.
that dude.
Yeah. Nah, for real. Can't be
Yeah.
that guy.
I think not just that it's like child endangerment that you were experiencing because of the road rage, but it's also like, oh, now that kid's gonna remember me for the rest of my life as that dude who almost like went off on his
Almost killed
dad.
my yeah. He
Like could
almost
have
killed my
killed
dad.
us, or like that sinks deep, where it's just like, okay, my behavior is not just like, we live in a world right now where it's like, well, if it doesn't hurt someone else, it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, you don't even know if it's hurting somebody else because you're not taking the time to reflect on that. So you started to see these moments come alive where you're like, dude, I gotta change. How did people start to notice the changes? Did people start to treat you like, oh, okay, he's changing? Like, what was that like? Because I think people like, we want to be at the end result and be like, good, we're good. But the going from someone who wants to irk people and then get a reaction from people and then always being let's say almost a victim mindset where we're then just now angry at the world because we're like, oh, everyone's out to get me, but then everyone pisses me off and everybody doesn't like me. I don't know, like, how do we go from that to, okay, I need to know that this is going to be a process and people won't accept me for it?
And that's it. Honestly, was kind of, it was hard because I was pretty funny in the crowd that I was in, right? Like
Oh
I,
no, were you
I
not the
got
funny
all
guy
the
afterwards?
well, not as funny because I didn't say all the mean, stupid shit, right? Like I still
Oh
have my funny moments, but it's not like
yeah.
I'm not. It was, like
Mm-hmm.
when you're at the restaurant and you see somebody wearing something that they probably shouldn't be wearing. I was the guy who would be like, God dang, like, and
Yeah.
it was horrible because you made that person feel bad. There was no reason for it, man. What they're doing has no bearing on me. But
Yeah.
I was going to point that out. I was going to say something dumb, and it was all about just trying to get a reaction, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of it had to do because I had daddy issues or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
I I was raised by a single mom that was only 14 years old, so
Oh,
yeah, so
okay.
I had these little issues that I
Hmm.
I needed to find my like my popularity or my whatever it was to make me feel like I was important.
Right.
And that I was always chasing the happiness. Like, right, I'll be happy when I
Yeah.
get rich. I'll be happy
Yeah.
when these people like me. I'll be happy then.
Right.
And all that
So
is total BS.
it is. But it also like what I had to hold my tongue because you were in the middle of talking. So I was like, wait. Um when you're okay, so this is I think this is where some people might struggle with the moment of change. You went from being the funny guy amongst your friends to being like, hey, okay, I don't need to say that. So in a way, were you chasing attention then?
Oh, at that time, 100%, dude. I was like, yeah, dude. I would look for attention anywhere. Like if I was horrible. I would
Yeah.
like. I'll give you a quick story. I was at a buddy's. We were all watching the UFC, and I was being a jackass, kind of flirting around with one of the dude's wives, and he
That's a
slapped the
no-go.
shit at him. Like he
Good.
slapped the shit at him. Yeah, yeah.
Good.
But at the time,
Deserved.
well, I'm not liking you over here. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's all right.
My
But
side
yeah,
comments get
but
me in trouble.
that was me, right? That was my
Right,
mentality.
right.
Like I could do whatever I wanted to do, and if you didn't like it, then who cares? And I at
Mm,
that time, I was a pretty big dude. I weighed like I'm 6 foot. I weighed about 228. I was probably like
okay.
10, 11% body fat. Like
Mm,
I was like a big bag of cement. Like I
yeah,
was in
yeah.
pretty damn good shape. And that was kind of just because I wanted to be in good shape because then nobody ever talked shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it was all this game that played, interacted,
Yeah,
and do
it
all this
did. I
good
could
stuff.
see it. And I think that there are some people who are out there who are like, well, I want to continue to be the funny person, so I'm not changing. Because if I change, then I have no worth. And what you found was like you were like, actually that's not what gives me worth. I'm actually hurting people. I'm doing things that are inappropriate. I'm leaving scars in the exchange to be the funny guy. So when you changed, how did your friends respond to that? Because this is where I think a lot of people are like, it's not worth the risk of change to lose people. So what was that received by your friends? Did you change friends? What did that look like?
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I ended up moving to a new area. So I don't get to chat with a lot of those guys that I used to. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
still talk with them, but I think in some ways we've all matured a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
so they just know like I don't use the N word anymore. I don't really drink anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm not going to be that guy who's just saying the dumb crap. I mean, they still, we still all get along, but
Yeah.
in some ways, I'm not like I haven't been invited to a lot of the things that I used to seem like I got invited to,
Mm.
and I don't know if it's because I changed or just time goes by, but I have a kind of a newer group of friends that and they all and the goals have changed, right? A lot
Yeah.
of these
Yeah.
guys they've already been kind of successful in the business world, and now
Right.
they're looking at just leaving a legacy, finding what their idea of
Mm.
happiness is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where like that's the coaching. Like I do that coaching now. I coach men to be able to look in the mirror and go, hey, I
Yeah.
like that guy.
Mm.
And so yeah, I've changed a lot with friends, but I still get along with a lot of the other ones. So it's kind
Right.
of yeah, I
It
just don't
just
seem as much.
I like that you said priorities shifted, but also age. You grew up. Now, it is very different in my head when I see an 18-year-old being an 18-year-old versus a 40-year-old man being an 18-year-old or a 40-year-old woman. It goes both ways. Where I will
Yeah.
sit in rooms where I'm like, okay, you're 18 and it's clear that you're 18. You just haven't known. So you need to be guided a little bit. But then you see someone who's 40, 50, 60 years old acting as if they're a teenager, and you're just like, pause, stop. Like, this is, first off, not attractive at all. Secondly, like, super offensive and rude. And you're just being immature. So I think, though, what you brought up, and you said this, is like it had nothing to actually do with the people around them. It had everything to do with what was internal to you, like the insecurities that you had, the lack that you grew up with. Having a mom who was 14, that is super young for her to be a mom. But also must have been like child, like a friend of mine had her daughter when she was 14 as well, and she said that it was a child, like a child raising a child. And so she's apologized to her oldest, who's now in his 30s, and she's like, think of it like I'm only 45 and my kid's 30. Like, and I was like, that's insane to me.
Yeah,
But she
there's
said like,
relationships that have further.
yeah, and there wasn't a lot of things that, you know, she brought and said, like there was a lot of insecurities she had, and then she passed down, and so her son has had to deal with those insecurities too. And it's all about, like, age doesn't really matter. You could be 35 and a mom with a 2-year-old, and you can be 14 with a mom with a 2-year-old. You're just very young. But if you're acting young, we have to look in the mirror and say, am I wanting this to be the legacy that I leave? Like, do I want people, first off, like there was a saying someone said that said, imagine you being at your funeral, what would they say about you? And there was a time in my life that I'm like, I don't even know if anybody would show up. Like that's like, I don't know what my legacy is. I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just kind of like that thought of just like, who would even show up? And I didn't want that. I didn't want that part of my legacy. So I was like, I want to do more and be around with more people and make sure I'm there for them. Not because I want 100 people at my funeral, but I don't want to be known as the girl that someone's like, yeah, I knew her once, and no one remembered who I was. You know, I wanted to leave something good behind for everybody that I had an opportunity to speak with. So when you are talking to these young men and you're coaching them through, what is the biggest thing? Like, I think it's hard for women to understand, like, what is it, the mental thing that's going through most young men's head or men's head when it's like leaving a legacy? Is it money? Is it cars? Or is there something deeper? Because I think sometimes we just, like women, we kind of think like men just care about trucks and beer. Like, we don't really think that some men have that ability to go deep.
You know what's funny is you brought up that eulogy thing about the,
Yeah.
your funeral. That is one of the exercises that I did that helped change me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because when I did it, I was like, oh shit, man, there's nobody going to be, or there's going to be a few people and they're probably going to say, hey, he was a
He
funny
was a
guy, but he
jerk.
was definitely a jerk. And so, like,
Like,
that
oops.
was one of the big, that was definitely one of the big things. But
Yeah.
like, what I find is it's all ego, man. And that's the bad thing about guys. We're just, I think, and I'm going to go back a little bit, but
Yeah.
it became bad almost to be a man for a little while in our
Oh,
world. Like,
still. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's still there, but it's starting to swing back a little bit, right?
A little, yeah. Yeah.
And and in some ways, like, we deserved it because, man, we're jackasses. Like, but that's
Yeah.
the way we were raised, right? Don't show
Well,
your
some were,
feelings.
some were not, but everyone was labeled the same. And that's where it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah, I'm just throwing a big
yeah.
generalization there.
Well,
I'm
but
not.
that was what the generation was. It didn't matter what age you were. You were a man, you were horrible. And like, I heard that so many times that I'm like, I know a lot of really good, solid men. And it was like, nope, 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 that they're lying to you. And I'm like, oh no, oh no, where are we at?
But see,
So
yeah,
yeah.
see that's that whole stupid ass pendulum, right?
Yeah.
It swings all over the place. Like, there for a long time, everything on the left was good. Everything on the left became bad. Everything on the right was horrible. Everything on the right became good, and it swings
Yeah.
back and forth all over the freaking place. And most of us are pretty damn close to the middle, but we get left out because everybody wants to cater to the biggest noise, right? The
Right.
squeaky wheel
Yeah.
gets the freaking grease.
God, yeah. It's
And
exhausting.
oh, it is. It's freaking crazy, man. And like, to me, I think man just gotta we started getting left behind because you can even look at the school, like the number of, like, men who got scholarships went so far down. So
Yeah.
now there's more women in CEO, and some of it needed to change, right? Because there was an
Right,
imbalance
right.
there. But when you have an imbalance and you go too far one way, now there's the imbalance the other way.
Right.
And I think in some ways, like, these younger guys, and we've all went through this whole COVID crap, and people not having the ability to lose. Like, learning how to lose is probably one of the biggest skills in this freaking world.
Yeah.
And it is okay to lose. There are winners and losers in our freaking life. And sometimes you're going to be on the lost side a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but when people learn that there is no such thing as losing, that's just bull crap. You become weak.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you have to learn to lose to learn how to win. And I think we got away from that. Like, everybody gets a medal. Hey, everybody goes and plays, and everybody gets a medal, and everybody has to have equal time. No, dude, like, there's
It's
people
not.
that suck at.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Go
I was
ahead.
going to
Tell
say
me.
it's not the real world. That's
It
the
is not.
problem, because when you're sitting across from someone who is just as talented as you are, who happens to be more available, you lose that opportunity. And it had nothing to do with the lack of or whatever, but you just didn't win it. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. But what we have said is, well, then you failed because you didn't get an A on this. And it's like, do you realize in the real world we don't have A's? Like, we don't.
It's
Congratulations. Like,
yeah.
it's very hard. I've sat with a lot of people who are just like, I just don't understand why I'm not winning. And I'm like, you realize that's life right there, is that we will fail, and failure is good. It's actually really healthy for us to fail, because we get to learn so much more from that failure versus just getting things right the first time. We don't learn anything when it's handed to us. We just don't.
That is huge, and I agree.
Mm.
That is like one of the biggest things. And like some of my issues, I'll like. So when I got out of school, like, the affirmative action thing was big, and
Yeah.
I took a test to be a highway patrol. I scored in the, like, top 3% on the physical. I was top 2% on the written test, and I was top 2% on the oral examination. And I
Mm-hmm.
got a letter in the mail that said, "Hey, you did fantastic on the test, but we can't hire you because you're white." And like, that was like one of those final little, like, ugh. And
Yeah.
and that's where I think, like, a lot of harm. It was one of those things, right? In some ways it had to happen because maybe the minorities weren't getting the job
But it swung
because
too
of their
far.
thing. But it
Yeah.
swung too far, and we did it with a lot of things. We swing it too far for just, it. Again, it is what it is.
You can say what you need to say, because this is a place where we're having a conversation that's real. So don't be afraid. like in all honesty, everything swings too far. Like, we're starting to see that, we saw that with feminism, where it was swinging away, like, no men, every blah blah blah. But now feminism is like, oh, you're a woman who wants to stay home, you're stupid. And you want to raise your kids, that's stupid. You want to have kids, that's stupid. And it's like, why? Like, if we really believe in this, why can't we just do it? Why does it have to swing to so far where it's like, oh, okay, well, you've passed all these things, you qualify, but because of the color of your skin, regardless of the skin color, why are we saying, nope, sorry, no go? It's like, nope, now we've swung too far. Like, we need to be able to stand in the middle and say, okay, did you have an opportunity to learn these things? No, here's the resource you can tap into to go learn these things. Awesome, you're doing that on your own. But we should now not swing, because now what's going to happen is we're going to swing too far again, is when now, okay, affirmative action is not going to be taking place, but now we're going to watch this swing way too far, where it's like, oh, because of the color of your skin, you're black, brown, whatever, you can't get the job. It's like, guys, stop. Like, let's get back to the middle. Do they qualify? Yes. Why are we not giving them the opportunity? Why are we swinging so far? That irks me, because it's like, we're not learning a lesson of how to actually do this. We have to wait for someone to tell us, and that's where the danger comes in. And I think, back to your point, it comes into then to us self-reflecting, like, we're not good enough, we'll never be good enough, so now I'm just going to say whatever I want to say just to get a laugh. And then we're just adding fuel to this never-ending cycle of pendulum swinging, and it's exhausting to watch.
It is freaking crazy, right? Like, and that's kind of when, and what I found is, like, I say, somebody asked me what my definition of freedom is, and my definition of freedom is being happy with who you are. Like,
Yeah.
you have to learn to be happy with who you are and where you're at, And then I always say, without being satisfied, right? Because you always
Yeah.
have to be growing in some direction. If you're not growing, you're dying. And I've had people argue with me about that. And I'm like, no, that's a fact. Like, there's no, like,
Right.
you
Right.
can look up anything. Like, if you're not growing,
Mm-hmm.
you're dying. You're going backwards.
It's true.
And, but you got to learn how to be happy with who you are. Like, and until you can do that, then you're never going to have that freedom to, maybe stand in that middle when everybody else is like looking at you going, what the hell? Like, dude, come over here.
Right.
You're
Right.
on this side, right? And every once in a while I have people say, nah, man, like they'll ask me a question like, why are you doing this? And I'm like,
Mm.
because I didn't like the guy I was. Like, why are you questioning it? Like, why should it even matter to you why I'm doing it? But everybody wants to know, like, why are you changing? Like, why are you trying to get better? What do you think you're better than me, or are you just trying to make money from it? And it's I don't know. It's just
But where
fun.
does that come from for them? I know you know the answer to that. Where is that coming from? Is it really about your change, or is there something else happening?
That's usually right. Usually when you never get picked on by somebody that's above you. That's kind of like the thing, right? If somebody's hustling and they're doing everything that they're trying to be the best person they can be, that person above you is not going to pick on you. But it's like being in that lobster or that crab trap, right? All those crabs could get out, but they leave it open because they know the bottom crabs aren't going to let the dude get out. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody just keeps pulling that guy, or back down into the trap. And it's the same thing we
Yeah.
do in life. It's like if you see somebody trying to get out of what that social standard is, we start reaching up there and we pull the toe down a little bit, right? Hey, no, you can't get too far away from where I'm at, because now it's going to make me have to reflect and, oh shit, maybe I'm not as good of a person I was pretending to be. And I did it
Yeah.
for many, 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 many years.
Yeah.
Like, hey, no, 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 no. You can't come out. Nah, let's talk shit about somebody.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to obviously the insecurity of that person. But when we're looking at somebody else win, we have, I think it comes back to what you were when you were little, you were saying that a lot of the times it was like, oh, it's because of the color of your skin. And it had nothing to do with that, but it did have something to do with your behavior, of your attitude. And someone was trying to actually help you. But then what we do as adults, we're just like, oh, that person's winning. They're taking from me. I don't get that. And it's like, nope, them going and bettering themselves does nothing but influence you to be better. And I think there's sometimes it's an insecurity of like, well, if they get better, then who's going to be sitting with us? And then like, I'm going to be by myself. So we pull that person back. Then there's other times that that person is just so miserable that they're like, if you're going forward, how dare you? Like, no, you get to sit with me in this. Like, and it's like, no, like people are allowed to grow. And I do think we have gotten away from that. And there's that. Have you heard the saying about the millionaire? They say that the millionaire will never a millionaire will never laugh at someone trying to become a millionaire and better themselves. They won't be paying attention. A gym person, like someone, a fitness trainer is never going to laugh at someone trying to get healthy at the gym. A doctor is never going to laugh at someone trying to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it for themselves to get healthy. Like these are things that we assume like, oh, because that person's 10 miles ahead of me, they're going to look back and like push down barriers so I can't get above them. It's like, girl, boy, they are not even paying attention to you. Like they're so focused on the road ahead, they don't have time to look back. And when I heard that, I was like, dang, like, so I'm saying this to myself. I'm telling myself that narrative is nobody wants me to win. Nobody wants to open a door for me. But it's like they're so focused on the front where they forgot that they accidentally just shut the door. But the door's unlocked if I want to go through it. And I'm like, dang, like this is not okay. This is in my head. But am I also going to be the person to reach back and leave the door open and just say like, hey, if you'd like to come through this door, it's open. But what I ask you is that you don't try to pull other people down. Like that's not cool. But we do see that happen a lot is people just pull each other down. And I do think some of it comes from insecurity. And then some of it comes from them not wanting to win. 1 second. Tammy, I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you in. I just emailed you. Can you get out and then I'll bring you back in a minute?
Yes. Sorry. How do I leave?
It's okay. I'm not sure. There we go. So I'll just restart that. I actually emailed her and said not to come in. It's okay, Tammy. I'll edit this out. Okay, so yeah, so I think insecurity is really what drives someone to being how they are. It's definitely how we are grown and learning and things like that. What else would you want to tell anybody who is experiencing this? Like, how would you start that conversation if they're like, I really do want to change. I do not want to be this person anymore.
I always like have them, like the way I always start is the first week, just write down what are the things that start triggering, like notice like what your mood is, right? Notice
Mm-hmm.
when you get triggered, notice when you get pissed off, notice what makes you happy, and start noticing those. But
Mm,
then i I take it always back to my five fundamentals is sleep, hydration, nutrition, breathing, and movement. Because once you get those things dialed in,
mm-hmm.
because physiology drives psychology, and that,
So
right?
true.
And most of us are so jacked up with one of those five, if not all five of those, that you don't even give yourself a chance to have an
Right.
optimal brain function and body function. So I always start with just having people reflect, see what their deal is, and then fix those. And we'll start fixing those things one by one, little tiny adjustments at a time, because you can't fix everything at once. You have to go piece by piece, and that's where we
Yeah.
screw up the most. Is everybody like on a diet? You just totally change everything you were doing. You've been doing that shit for 30 or 40 years. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. But that
Right.
is a learned thing that you've done. So don't try to change everything at once. You got to pick out the one thing that'll give you the best result. Like say for me, every single day I write three things that I'm grateful for. I write one
Mm,
about myself, one about my wife, and then one about the world.
mm.
And that's proven in like a 4 week period. By doing that, it gives you a 25% raise in your happiness,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Super simple.
Okay, but I hear a question I know somebody's going to ask. How does not sleeping well, drinking water, or eating healthy create someone who is so angry that they are saying things that are really horrible to people? How does that tie back?
Because think about like, and it took me a while to figure this out though, but think about when you actually have a fantastic night of sleep. How do you wake up in the morning? Like you wake up, you're happy, you feel energized, and
Mm.
you're more in control of your day. And then
Mm.
you think about like how crappy do you feel when you wake up and you had a horrible night of sleep. Maybe you got a half an hour night of sleep, right? And you were
Yeah.
stressed out all night.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat your relative? How do you treat the
Mm.
person on the street that you just met? How do you eat that day? Usually eat like
Yeah.
shit because you don't have any discipline anymore because you just don't feel like doing it.
Mm.
And it is so funny. It's crazy the way these things work and pile on,
Right.
because once you get like, just using dehydration for an example, 50% of the people in the United States right now are in a constant state of dehydration.
It's a
And
lot.
look at what it does to your brain. It causes brain fog. It causes memory loss. It causes a cortisol buildup because there's no, like there's no flush, right? And there's all these
Mm.
little bad things that it does. So then, yeah, you might be you might recognize yourself as having depression or some other bullshit that the doctor is going to tell you, but a lot of it comes because of we've been processed to we've
Yeah.
created 40 years of bad crap.
Yeah. No, that makes sense though. Well, because it's interesting because it's the Snickers commercial.
Dude, I was that guy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, you don't like it's I'm thinking through all of the times like when I don't get sleep, how much more agitated I am and willing to, and this is what I think is the key here, is willing to be a jerk to people. So it is what you said. You said it. You said there's no self control at that point where you're just like, I don't even care. versus on a good day, you would be like, ooh, that's rude. Ooh, that's going to come across the wrong way. I'm gonna go nap. And like if you're a Christian, it actually is so funny that there's this moment in the Bible where there was like God had told someone to take a nap and eat food, and then they got up and because they were like crying about a bunch of stuff, and so it's like I was like, go eat and go nap. And like so I'm like, it's biblical, everybody. It's biblical. But it is interesting, like, to think about like how water, even in like brain fog, depression, and it's like, okay, now you're miserable, now you're going out and you're going to make other people miserable because you're mad, and then it's just this evil cycle that is, I'm going to kick you, you're going to kick this other person, you're going to go home, yell at your wife's going to yell at your kids are going to yell at the dog's going to probably try to bite the cat, and it's just dysfunction. So that's where you're like, hey, like, start small first. Start with water, start with food, start with accurate sleep, then start to look at what your behaviors are and say, ooh, that needs to change. Okay, that's really bad. Where did this belief come from? And that's where the shift can start happening. And I think that's such a wise thing to, like, first start small, but with something that actually is really influencing to you as your behavior. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we end?
No, I would just say you can find my book on Amazon.
Yes.
Actually, all profits from my book are going to help this little dude with leukemia. I met him over in Kauai. I do not keep anything from the book, so if you would like to, and once he gets fit, all better, I'm gonna move it on to the next person.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, if you want,
can you say the book again?
Asshole to Awesome. Journey to Joy and Happiness. There's one with a white cover and there's one with a red cover. There's the red cover one is a journal, just in case you go look at it. Also ernestwood.com, if you ever want to, you can get on there, get a free copy of the book, and schedule a chat with me, and we can just figure
absolutely.
out, hey, I most of the time I just talk with people and I can just point them in the right direction with some of the stuff, and it's just fixing those fundamentals, and it's a lot of the crap that we already know, even though we were lied to in school a lot about a lot of the nutritional stuff. But fix those things, and all of a sudden, when your brain's working right, your body's working right, now all of a sudden you're a little more grateful, you're ready to forgive somebody, you have a little more patience, and then go do that act of kindness every day. Because that act of kindness is huge.
That's massive. And I love that we're ending on that. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out to Ernest. He can help walk you through it. I think this is something that we really do need in our culture a lot more. We need to be able to reflect, and we need to have people who are actually willing to call us out and then show us how to fix it. But please get his book, Asshole to Awesome. I think it's great. I think that is such a clever name. And then again, like he said, the proceeds would go over to a young boy fighting leukemia. So thank you so much, Ernest, for joining us. You guys can subscribe, like, and follow on YouTube, as well as go to Ernest and have a conversation. Have a wonderful day, you guys.
Thank you.